Okay, guys, we're here with Pat IRWIN right here on WUSB in his Long Island City studio. Pat, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Thanks for joining us on Finn's Revolution. You've been involved in a lot of bands that our listeners are familiar with, that I absolutely love, and two of those bands, of course, in New York City were Eight-Eyed Spy with Lydia Lunch, and my favorite, the Raybeats, which our listeners are very familiar. And you guys have just released a sort of found record, but we'll get to that in a minute. Can you first tell us how the Raybeats got together, where you were, what year it was, all the rest of that?
Yeah, it was late 1979. Don Christensen, Jody Harris, and George Scott were all in the Contortions together. George and Lydia were longtime friends, and Lydia, George and I were in Eight-Eyed Spy, and George really was the inspiration. He was just a fan of instrumentals, fan with capital F-A-N. I mean, he had all the 45s you can possibly imagine, and then some. And he and Don, Jody, and I just kind of had this idea that we wanted to form an instrumental band. That's the short story, really. Don and Jody were out of the Contortions, and but not in another band yet. And George and I had been playing with Eight-Eyed Spy for just, I don't know, half a year or something. And that was it. It was just, we were fans of instrumental rock and roll.
Okay, yeah, and especially them coming from the Contortions, which was more of an instrumental band than, with James singing and all that, than a vocal band, although they had plenty of songs with lyrics. The instrumental breaks were where the key was, and that's some kind of driving sound.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys got together and did some recording, and what was the first, can you remember the first Raybeats recording, the first thing you guys did together?
Yes, we were in Austin, Texas, and we did an EP for an offshoot for a Beggar's Banquet with 4 songs. We recorded it in Austin, Texas. We were on the road and just slammed it out. It's fun.
It was fun, right? And then of course you guys released Guitar Beat, which I think was recorded in New York, yeah?
No, that was recorded in England.
Oh, in England, that's right. Okay. I don't have my notes in front of me.
That's all right. Yeah, Martin Rushent produced that, and we were fans of Martin.
Right.
He had done the Buzzcocks and the Stranglers, and had a new studio outside of London, and we were the first band to actually use it.
Cool.
Pete Shelley was then doing some solo stuff just after us.
Pete from the Buzzcocks. Okay, so you guys started to play around. You were big. Obviously, you're talking about recording outside of New York City, even though you guys are really a New York band, right?
Right.
Okay. Why was that? Why did you wind up recording? You went to London to because you were fans, or what was the case? Or was that the place that you got the best offer to record, or what was the story?
It was probably all of that.
Okay.
Martin, was a named producer in our eyes, right? And rightfully
Sure.
so. And the opportunity to work with him, it all fell into place. We had fans in England, so perhaps we were doing a small tour at the same time.
Sure.
The Raybeats were we had fanatics. We had fans, but we had fanatics.
Right.
And so we were able to play in all sorts of places.
Right, especially a lot of great urban locations, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The New York City downtown scene at the time, obviously a big thriving event between the no-wave stuff that had happened just before the Raybeats, that you were heavily a part of, and everything happening downtown, and that was just getting wider. It was spreading. I mean, I lived on Long Island at the time, and I used to come in to see the Raybeats.
Oh, cool.
And absolutely astonishing shows, and the scene was packed and getting bigger at the time, right?
Right.
And what was that like? Did you feel were you guys surprised that things were spreading, let's say, outside these metropolitan areas, and you were pulling in the suburban kids like me at the time?
You know, to say that we thought about it in those terms, I think would be an exaggeration. But anytime you can make music and keep your head above water is a pretty big deal. And particularly, you know, at that point, because, you know, we didn't really think of the Raybeats as something that we would be doing all the time.
Right.
And offers kept coming in. So it was pretty cool. And we would play, you know, we played gigs out on Long Island. We played with the Flesh Tones. I think we played with the Waitresses. We played with other bands. And we would, you know, I remember we did some dates with the Stranglers, and we did some dates, with the B-52's. We did some dates with the Romantics, all sorts of different bands.
And we'll get to the B-52's in a little bit for other reasons. But, and that was a great thing about watching all those shows, because I definitely saw you a couple of times, I think, with the Flesh Tones. And I think you played more than once with the Flesh Tones.
Oh, I'm sure we did.
And what a great combination that was, just the guitar sounds all going on at the same time between Keith and you guys. And I think were you the only multi-instrumentalist in the Raybeats, or?
Yes.
He says modestly.
But, I mean, please. Don't exaggerate.
Very good, very good. Well, more than one is multiple.
I did, for better, for worse.
Very good. A little saxophone, little keyboard on occasion, right?
A little,
and guitar as well.
Yes, exactly.
And, of course, our friend Danny Amos, who we've had on the show before, also was in the Raybeats.
That's correct. And he joined after the tragic death of George Scott.
Right.
But, you know, Danny and George knew each other. Now, that was great. And Danny was probably more of a fan, or as much of a fan as instrumental rock and roll as any of us. And he had a band in Minneapolis called the Overtones that had released a 45 that was fantastic. We had done some shows with him. And so he opened the door. I mean, he saved the band. Really, literally saved the band by just saying, hey, look, I want to play with you guys. And it was wonderful to really have him say that. And he took it over on bass and played.
And Danny, you guys seemed to be completely comfortable live in that arrangement. It was like nothing had changed almost in terms of comfort on with the band members. Yeah,
it was very. Danny made it that way, but everybody just wanted to keep going, which I think is one way to deal with the tragedy that happened. But yeah, Danny was a champ. Wonderful.
So. We're here actually to talk about, of course, a brand new release, and it's always wonderful to say a sentence like, there's a new release by the Raybeats.
Yeah.
You know, I don't get to say that too much anymore.
And it is new.
It is new, exactly right. This is stuff that fans of the band didn't know about or had happened in many cases. And this is a thing that's kind of a collaboration, really, with Philip Glass, Michael Reisman, and... of the Philip Glass Ensemble, and tell us how this record that we have now, which is titled the Raybeats, The Lost Philip Glass Sessions, right?
That's correct, right.
Tell us how this came together. It's one of those things, Philip seems like he was downtown. Did it all just fall together? Was it planned? What happened?
A little of both.
Okay.
You know, first of all, it was in that kind of creativity, you know, and different people doing different things was in the air. The Kitchen.
The Kitchen, downtown club, The Kitchen.
It was an alternative, art space, really. Philip had performed there, but they would book rock bands. They booked Glenn Branca, Rhys Chatham. They would have art shows. Galleries were booking bands. Philip was playing in rock and roll clubs. And Philip wanted to produce a rock and roll band. And through several different personal channels, we knew Philip. We were familiar with him. I was a fan, definitely. and we had mutual friends, and it seemed like, and Don knew Kurt Moncasey fairly well, who was really an essential member of Philip's ensemble at that time. He was a sound engineer, and it just seemed to be something we wanted to try.
Okay.
It was really just, we went for it. It wasn't that deep. We just did it.
Was this like a thing that the labels, any record labels were involved in, or was it just you guys who got it going?
Now, my recollection is...
Qualifying statement.
We were no longer working with the offshoot of Beggar's Banquet, but we were on a new label, or we didn't have any U.S. label, and we had just gone with Shawnee Records, which was a small indie label that still exists, and we did these recordings with Philip, but they weren't that interested in them. The recordings were really different than the way they thought the band should sound.
Okay.
And so that's why we kind of forgot about them.
So in other words, did you guys like present this material to them for potential release? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
And they rejected it?
Yes.
So they rejected, let me just get this straight, something produced and collaborated on with Philip Glass.
Let me interrupt.
Raybeats.
Yes.
Okay, well that was a mistake, but that's just my opinion.
Well, it was mine too. I mean, we were shocked, and it was a funky way to get started.
Now, what year was this, if you don't mind me interrupting?
Well, we did the recordings in 1982, so it would have been right around that time.
Okay.
And I don't have any rough mixes, but I know the mixes didn't sound the way they do now.
Okay.
But still, it was an opportunity to have Philip and the Raybeats.
Yes.
It was just lost. But we've got it now, so there you go.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So who had possession of the actual tapes?
Philip.
Philip had possession of the tapes all this time. Okay. To your knowledge.
I didn't know where they were, but we found them.
Okay.
I had these mixes, and I would see Philip throughout the years. We're still friendly. Philip, do you want to release those? Sure. We were ahead of our time, you would say. And I would, maybe not, but I still thought they were really cool sounding. And it just took some time to pull it together.
Okay. Because I have to say, out of the rock bands that Philip's, like poly rock, right?
Right.
I mean, I liked the poly rock album at the time when it first came out that Philip did with those guys, but this stuff blows that away, blows it out of the water. It's the most fresh and energetic thing because of your guys' playing edge. And then Philip comes in with the arranging. Now that's another thing. How did that work out? Because it sounds like at least some of the songs sound like they're written. You guys did them, and Philip came in and or Michael came in and did stuff on top of them. Were they true composing collaborations as you remember, or no?
Well, they weren't true composing.
Well, and I also understand. Obviously, some of them were, Jack the Ripper, etc. So they were already written, but so they weren't.
No, but Philip's contribution, I think, was more substantial than I had understood at the time.
Okay.
And to me, that's the real joy of this record. Is Philip's writing is still there's things to be discovered in it. And the fact that he had an open enough mind to work with a band like us at that time and, take from what he had heard and say, this is what I want to contribute. You nailed it. That's really what he did. Now, there were some changes in the recording studio, if I remember correctly. A little of this going here, a little of that. Minor. The music was fairly together when Philip did his parts.
Okay.
But still, we were there at the same time. playing at the same time, working at the same time. He had everything charted and composed out that we had done.
Really?
So, yeah.
Okay.
Which was really shocking to me. He was.
Those are days that couldn't be done by machine.
No, Philip was the first composer that I ever met who could write music like he would write his name.
Okay.
He could. It was thrilling and stunning. And he would say, well, you do this 7 times here, and you do it 9 the next time. Now and he would say this a little. Now we wouldn't count,
right?
But he would count,
right? And it just came natural to me. He'd hear it once and know that, probably, right?
Pretty much.
That's funny. All the naturalistic things you do, he could just codify as on paper. That's
absolutely thrilling.
Very cool.
Wonderful.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So the whole recording. About how long were you guys in the studio? Were you in like for a week straight, or that kind of deal? 2 what?
2 days.
2 days.
I wouldn't have remembered, but it was written. Maybe it was 2.5, but that's what it says on the tracking sheets.
Okay.
Wow. That's the only record. That's what we have to use to remember who was there and who played what.
Wow. And did you guys record this at a place Philip had, or did you record it?
It was Green Street Recording in Soho.
Okay.
And Kurt had designed, if I'm not mistaken, now I'm sure I'm going to get these details wrong, but Kurt had a relationship with that studio, and he had designed the control room.
Okay.
Lots of bands. I think the Beastie Boys went on to record there. I mean, Run DMC was in there. A lot of other. It was a popular studio.
Okay. So this was basically like Philip's thing saying we should do it here, or Kurt saying we should do it here. Okay. All right. So you guys were in somewhat unfamiliar territory in terms of studios you had worked in, or was...
Very. That was actually, you know what?
What?
No, New York was recorded there.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So
or at least the contortions part of it, but I wouldn't be surprised if most of it was recorded there.
So it wasn't that unfamiliar with some of the players, at least.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And
gosh, I hope I get that right.
Well, it would make sense, kind of, because wasn't Brian Eno the exec on that?
No New York. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right, and so if he was there, it would make sense he might hook up with some guys like that.
That's really the way. If that's not exactly right,
something like that,
it could be right, because that's the way the vibe at the time was.
Very good.
He was around, Philip was around, people were. It was just in the air.
Okay, so Philip's had these. You said you had certain mixes from the time. Right. Right, rougher mixes, right, or no?
I have cassettes.
Oh, okay. All right. So, who mixed the mix? What's on the album we hear today?
An engineer I work closely with named Patrick Deravaz.
Okay, so this stuff is just recently remixed, right, into the version we hear?
Very recently.
Okay. Because I have to tell you, it sounds. There's two things it sounds like. I mean, it does sound like it's time. There is a bit of that. You can hear Philip. Just hearing the Raybeats takes me back anyway. But the drum sound, etc., like that. There's certainly a bit of an 80s feel to it, but it also sounds amazingly fresh and cool and modern, all at the same time.
Thank you.
It sounds really, really sharp.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you guys have just done an absolutely spectacular job on this CD. It's just really nice. And it's on, what's the label it's on currently?
It's called Orange Mountain Music, which is Philip's label.
Which is Philip's label, right? All Philip's stuff comes out on there.
Yeah.
And you do the liner notes for it, which is very nice.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me are these other tracks that I remembered one, but I didn't remember 3 of them.
Okay.
All of them. I remember, of course, after we started, I can remember bits and pieces. It's not that it's just not time, the distance of time that made me, but it's really how fast we were going and things that we were doing. I remember recording The Thunder with Don for a song, Hoodlum Priest. That was one of the last things that we did together. And there's another track called 1.2 Girls, which I remember the riff. But these were bits and pieces that when we went back, I listened to I got the tapes transferred, and it was like, well, these tracks they're all done. Mm-hmm. I just have to mix them.
Right.
And so I started a couple of them. Don started one of them, and then Patrick Deravaz, who does all of my engineering now, finished them.
Wow. And of course, you talk about the mixes. Were you surprised? Did you remember? I'm sure you remembered some. Did you remember how much singing you guys actually did on this record? You guys are singing on this record.
Yes.
Are you singing on it, Pat, yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. It's pretty amazing because you and I were we were just discussing the Flesh Tones, and once the vocals get added to some Raybeats tunes, they ain't that far apart.
Right. Yeah.
So what did you guys plan to sing, or this was like a last minute decision, or what was the story?
we did perform the James Brown song, "I Do Just What I Want," towards the end of the band, and there's a couple shows I remember in particular. We didn't really want to do vocals,
right,
but we just wanted to do something,
right,
and so we just shouted out the chorus. And it was fun.
And it is fun.
Yeah.
And it is very fun. And I have to tell you, the first time I listened to the CD through, I was like, I was initially shocked, to tell you the truth, even though I knew it was coming, because it's part of your liner notes and part of the information on the album. Even though I knew it was coming, I was shocked at the vocals in a way.
Right.
I was like, here's the Raybeats, and I'm hearing vocals. What's going on here?
Oh, this is fun for me, because that's sort of how it was for me, too.
I'm sure, yeah.
It was... I'll be damned. This is really something.
Yeah, and it really, really is. It's the whole CD is just so much fun. But the first time you hear the vocals, I'm telling you, it's a kick.
Cool.
And it was very impressive. And I don't think I ever saw a show with you guys do any vocals. But then I might not have seen the end, the end year or two there.
Right.
But I don't think you guys ever did any vocals. In fact, you didn't always even announce songs all the time on stage. Although right?
Probably not.
Right. Sometimes you guys did, but that was just into the next song.
Right.
It was a count off and the next song.
Yeah, hit it and quit it.
Right. Speaking of James Brown, right. Very, very impressive stuff. And we're going to be giving away some copies of the CD in a few moments right here on WUSB Stony Brook. So we're all excited by the album, but obviously you've been doing many, many, many other things since the last... When was the last Raybeats performance, by the way?
Oh, well, if literally, we played at Philip's 70th birthday celebration at Poisson Rouge.
Right.
We did a performance at Maxwell's for a benefit for Danny. This is all within the last year. Steve Almas played bass. Steve was in a band from Minneapolis called the Suicide Commandos, and then he formed his own band here called the Crackers, I believe. But he's got a wonderful solo record out right now that you should look into. It's great, and he's out on the road right now with the Del Lords playing bass.
Oh, great. Very cool.
And just a wonderful guy. And did a great job with us and played great. We played at Brooklyn Academy of Music, some sort of a party.
So occasionally,
but really, probably 85.
Okay, with occasional reunions, mainly in recent years.
Yes.
Okay, and for very good causes, especially Danny's benefit and all that. And listeners, of course, know. We're actually recording this on the Thursday before it's being broadcast, but as of now, the government shut down, and the reason, of course, is certain people's unhappiness with the so-called Obamacare plan. And those of you who remember the Danny Amos interview from last year that we did will remember Danny's feelings on this particular issue, and I'm sure He's fuming right about now. So, but that's the story there. All right. So, other projects after the Raybeats ended in '85. What was the? You were involved, obviously. You played with the B-52's on the road for a long time.
Yes, about 18 years.
And you played with them during their big wave of big hits, so to speak, right? Rome and all those songs, right?
Got pretty big.
Yeah, you guys were all over the world. How was that? That was being in a band that size.
Oh, well, how cool is that?
How cool is that?
You know, it was wonderful for all of us. I was a fan, and still am a fan of the B-52's, and when they didn't know they were going to last more than a week or two, right. Literally, and so when I started to play, it was myself, in addition to Kate, Cindy, Keith, and Fred. It was Sarah Lee from the Gang of Four.
Gang of Four and the League of Gentlemen. Right.
Myself and a drummer, Zach Alford, who has gone on to do many wonderful things. But the B-52's was his first big road experience. And we were the new kids at the table. And Love Shack just took off.
Sure.
We did the video. We were all in the video.
Right.
Boom. All of a sudden, 3 weeks turned into a year and a half. We were on the road. And we went from playing, I think one of our first gigs was CBGB's. We played Toads in Connecticut.
Sure.
We did a club in Boston. We went out to San Francisco. By the time we got to the West Coast, shows were starting to sell out. We were doing 2, 3. And by the time we got to LA, we had to move to the Greek Theater. It just really went quickly.
Yeah, that album exploded for them.
Yeah,
you were all part of that from the beginning of it, and going right in.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was a once in a lifetime experience.
Yeah, great.
I mean, it was good. It was new for everyone. You know, as much as I love the Raybeats and the experiences of the Raybeats, it could never have been that. You know, this was a major label with major management.
Everybody knew who the band was at that point.
Yeah.
Huge beyond belief.
Yeah.
What a ride.
It was a cool ride.
Yeah. Definitely. You still in touch with any of the B-52's?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Very good. Absolutely great band. We interviewed Kate quite a number of years ago. And they seem to have nothing but a great attitude about everything in life. So
yeah.
It's not fake. It seems completely real.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So obviously that's the big band, right? But you have several other projects you've been involved in since then, your own as well as others, right?
Well, I did. Around the same time, I started working on a cartoon called Rocco's Modern Life.
Right.
And
when you say that, we're talking about scoring for it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wrote the music. Kate and Fred sang the theme. I went on to do other cartoons, like I did Pepper Ann, which was a Disney cartoon, composed the score for that, and then a Cartoon Network show called Class of 3000, where I worked with Andre 3000 from Outkast. And I did movies, and then I did a TV show for HBO called Bored to Death, and now I'm writing...
And I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second, because Bored to Death, you just did a great show right here in Long Island City, incorporating lots of elements from that whole soundtrack with a great band, and that was a great show.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a hoot.
Yeah, right? It was a kick, and I thought the turnout was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it was cool.
Nice, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, Bored to Death, and now...
I do the music for a show called Nurse Jackie.
Which we're actually looking at a script from right in front of us, which is right behind our microphone here. And Pat's obviously working on this one.
Yep. Season 6.
So now, do you when you compose? I mean, I know probably everyone has different methods for this. People who do soundtrack work, do you compose simply based on the script? Do you compose watching it a filmed version of something? How do you do it? What do you
A little of both.
Okay.
As I get the script ahead of time, so I try to anticipate what they're going to need, and so I record things just using my guessing.
Okay.
But every situation is different. The cartoons I would score right to the picture.
Right.
Every second. That was a phenomenal experience. I mean, the band for Rocco's Modern Life, that was a band. Kevin Norton, who played with Anthony Braxton, Dave Hostra, who went on to be in the Contortions and the Raybeats, but lots of great jazz musician and cool. Rob DeBellis played clarinet and woodwinds. He was with Don Byron. Just Art Barron played trombone. He was with Duke Ellington. Mm-hmm. And this band on Rocco's Modern Life, it was like being in an engine.
Right.
A cartoon a week.
And that's the kind of thing, people don't always appreciate naturally. They're watching the cartoon. The music, because they're paying attention to the cartoon, is more of almost a sound effect rather than something they're just listening to. And that's where, you have your great composers, your great bands like Carl Stallings bands and people like that who are all playing against cartoons. And yourself, great compositional skills to make that all seem seamless, like it is background and it's a ride. It's
yeah. Well, it's fun because I teach. That's cool. I still to this day there are people who get really excited about those cartoons.
Oh yeah.
Who grew up with them. Mm-hmm. They could care less about the rock and roll bands.
Right.
That's nothing. It's the cartoons, which makes me feel great.
Yes.
But back to Philip Glass, I was telling Philip I was working on a cartoon, and then he said, "Oh, you're barking the dog." And
actually, Philip would be great on cartoons.
He would be awesome. Well, I think
he's done animation.
He's done Simpsons. I think Simpsons had an episode. He's so iconic now that he can be the subject of the Simpsons episode, or at least part of it.
That's funny. But there are still other projects you do. You guys, I saw you guys right in town here not long ago. You and, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting.
Walter.
Walter, right.
Right.
That was a great show.
Thank you.
That was at one of the galleries here in LIC. And that was a great show. So you're always doing some project, not only to quote unquote income-wise, but also, like I'm sure the soundtrack work, there's a certain pay to that in addition to enjoying it and getting to work with great musicians. But you're also doing other things that are just clearly just a musical joy for you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, Walter, J. Walter Hawks,
right, J. Walter, right,
is just one of the great musicians. He plays trombone, and he also writes music for cartoons. And he's a neighbor. He lives
in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah. So it's not a big neighborhood here. It's changing, but if there's a couple other musicians in the neighborhood, we know about each other.
Right.
And we work together now. We're working together on a project. He's doing for PBS a new cartoon called Peg Plus Cat, and I'm writing. He's the music supervisor, and I'm writing a couple songs for it. And
very cool. All right, so people can get more information on you, Pat, and you're being very modest about your side projects. You're not really talking that much about them, but you've got a million little things going on, and they're all on your website, where people can do downloads and all these different things of different projects of yours, and also order CDs, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So what? I hate to ask for the complicated website name, but what is it?
www. Pat IRWIN Music.
Oh, Pat IRWIN Music. That's PATIRWIN music.com. And hopefully some of our listeners hit over there and see various other things you have to offer. And you can also pick up, for those of you who don't win the CD tonight, you can also pick up copies of the lost Philip Glass sessions by the Raybeats at Orange
Mountain Music.
Okay.
OrangeMountainMusic.com, PhilipGlass.com.
Right, and that way it's direct to the label, something I always prefer to do myself. It's a good thing to do. But you can get it on Amazon and among other places too. But it's always nice to go right to the label because this way the artists themselves get a little more out of it. So.
Thank you.
So yeah, the Raybeats, all that. So stay tuned. We're going to do the giveaway. Pat Irwin, thank you so much for joining us on WUSB Stony Brook on Finn's Revolution. And it's been a pleasure having you.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.